Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 167. As always, I'm joined by Jordan.
As always, I'm joined by Jerrad. How you doing today, Jerrad?
I'm doing great. Little Bum Dom's not with us this week. I always appreciate when
Now
all
we
three of
got
us are
you,
on,
and I'll tell you what, Jerrad. Whenever you're on the show, it makes it a whole lot better than when you're not, which is never. So I don't even know what the fuck I'm saying.
Yeah, I have perfect attendance because the podcasts I'm not on don't exist, because whenever I'm not able to be on it, they just, they don't happen. Just how it works.
The Meister.
Yeah. In terms of what we've been playing, so obviously there was 2 new games that came out last week: Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order,
Shaw.
Pokemon Sword and Shield, which I purchased Sword. You got Shield, correct?
You know what, Jerrad? It's Jerrad's Sword, Jordan Shield.
Jerrad's Sword, Jordan Shield. I'll start off with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order first, because that's the game I played less of the 2.
Now, Jerrad, I'm actually going to interrupt you here, as if
Okay.
I don't already do that constantly. I just want to say, you don't know this, but I actually played both of these games.
Oh, wow. I'm interested.
Yeah.
So, obviously, for those listening, before we hop into it, spoiler-free, 100% for Jedi Fallen Order.
Absolutely.
Pokemon, I doubt we'll get into the narrative of it necessarily, so I doubt there will be spoilers, but we'll try to avoid those. I mean, there are a couple of things I can think of, but yeah, don't worry about spoilers here. So, in terms of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, I didn't actually get to play a whole lot of it. I'm probably, I want to say maybe 3.5, 4 hours in. Maybe that's too much. So I'm in, when you get your first choice of either going to Daramir, I believe is the name of the planet, Dathomir, or the other one.
Planet.
Yeah, or the
Tefo.
other one.
Zepho.
Yeah, I went to Zepho, and I want to assume that I'm like almost near the end of it.
Okay.
This isn't a spoiler to the actual map level. There's the goat-like creatures?
Yes.
There's a section on that level where you come to a little field with a bunch of them. I'm right past that section, if you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, maybe you haven't gotten to that part yet, or you're past me.
No, I've finished Zepho.
Okay.
Last night or the night before last.
It's right before the big elevator. There's obviously more to that, but I don't want to spoil it for people.
I got you.
Yeah. So I'm there, and it's just one of those things that I didn't have a whole lot of sit-down console play time, and that's why when I get into, I guess I'll just hop into it now, and then you can do your Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Pokemon stuff, or do you want to maybe talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order?
I say we just have a joint discussion on these 2 games specifically.
Okay, so far what I'll say is I haven't experienced any of the bugs people have experienced in terms of game-breaking stuff or weird, glitchy stuff. The most prominent issue, and pretty much the only issue I've encountered, is texture pop-in. Yeah. Which isn't... It's less worrisome on the actual environments and characters for me, and it mostly affects signs. Like, specific signs in the level design and in the actual menus. Like Cal and BD1 have some weird texture loading issues.
Happens on original Xbox One?
Original Xbox One, yeah. So
okay.
Old system. And I attribute some of that to that I'm playing on the oldest system possible. That also being the original PS4, obviously. So it hasn't bothered me too much, hasn't really taken me out of the world. Thankfully, like I said, I haven't encountered some of the terrible bugs and issues I've read about. I obviously will hear about if you've encountered some of those. But those were like the big Achilles heel of this game. If you followed any of the critical reception of this game, people have lauded how good the combat is. Not that it's anywhere original or kind of pushing anything forward. It just takes a lot of the best parts of really good games and mashes them all together. And that it's a really good Star Wars game in the sense of it captures what Star Wars is. What I will say is I think that the combat's really good. Obviously, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm unlocking these Force abilities, so I'm interested to see how those play in terms of difficulty. In terms of difficulty, I'm playing on the second to the hardest, which is Jedi Knight, I believe. I think it's Jedi Knight.
Jedi Knight would be normal.
The one above that.
Then Master and Grandmaster are the 2 hardest.
It's I believe it's master. Then, it's
Okay.
the one. It's the highest one that you can do that's not unlocked. That isn't locked at the beginning. I'm pretty sure it's master then.
Grandmaster is unlocked at the beginning. Number 4.
Okay, then it's not grandmaster. I think it's master.
It's Padawan, Knight, Master, Grandmaster.
Master. It's the third one. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm pretty sure it's master then.
Cool.
What were we gonna say though?
Just bridging off of glitches or performance, I guess is a better way to put it. I'm actually glad you mentioned that because before the show you were just talking to me about looking forward to the consoles for next year, right? And I honestly think, Jerrad, that is what I want more than anything else. Is I would just like to see a level of polish in games that isn't. I'm not talking about like. I want them to be more like Nintendo games in the level of polish, or that I want them to have better AAA production quality. I'm saying I would like to see some of the loose ends tied up, some of the seams to be sewn up, where texture pop in is a great example of that, like you're talking about. Or another thing that I'm seeing in Jedi Fallen Order is like I'll get done with a really great cutscene between these two really realistic characters where the Uncanny Valley isn't that bad and it's really engaging, and then the cutscene ends and my character's standing in view of the camera, and then like boom, the character that I was just talking to pops up next to me, you know? And it's like,
Oh yeah.
just video game stuff, you know, just
Yep,
stuff like
yeah.
that. I'm wondering when we're going to finally kind of close that gap, because that isn't necessarily like, oh, I walked backwards on the third Tuesday of the year in this specific spot in this specific game and it caused the game to crash, right? It's not something super specific like that. It's more just the way the game connects, or like a cutscene will transition from one shot to another, and like if the second shot is a ship flying through the sky, then the ship will like pop into the cutscene a second after the shot switches.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, where it's like, I would really just like to see those seams sewn up, if you will.
That's the focus.
To AAA gaming.
That's the focus I want for next gen too. Like, honestly, I don't want to say I don't care, but visual improvements are not going to be extraordinary moving forward, right? Like, it's not going to be a huge leap.
And resolution type stuff.
Yeah, and even like in the jump from like really polygonal stuff on the 64 to what we got afterwards, right? Of like fully rendered models and stuff like that. We're never going to really see that jump again in terms of visual feedback. The stuff you're talking about, like the video gamey stuff, I think is the best way to label it. Like, if you play video games for long enough, you understand what we're talking about. It's just these things that happen, and they're not. They can pull you out of the game, but they're not super based on performance. It's just kind of the way the code works in the game and how things work with one another.
But that's what it does. Is it's pulling me out of the game. Like I said, I watched this super engaging cutscene, and I'm getting into the story, and the music is there, and the visuals are there, and then I end the cutscene, and they do a nice fade out, fade back up, and it's like they're nailing some of the stuff. And this is not just Jedi Fallen Order or just Respawn Entertainment, but they're nailing some of that stuff, and then other stuff is like, boom, that character pops into the shot, and it's like, well, that is something that you're really only going to see in a video game. So yeah, it's video gamey stuff, you know.
Real quick, what lightsaber color are you rocking? For the most part.
So I'm really not too much farther than you. I basically just finished Zepho, and I'll give you a tip on Dathomir that I looked up without you having to get spoiled or anything, even though I didn't either. You can't complete Dathomir until you finish Kashyyyk, and you unlock Kashyyyk when you finish Zepho.
Got it. Cool.
So what I'm doing and what I would recommend is finish Zepho, head to Kashyyyk, and then go to Dathomir once you're able. Because, you know, it's like the Metroidvania thing of, like, you're not going to be able to access certain areas until you do Kashyyyk.
Yeah. I knew that I was going to wait a bit to go to Dathomir going in, because part of one of the things I read said that if you want to get a taste for how difficult this game can get out of the gate, go to Dathomir first, check it out, and then head to Zepho. Yeah, so I was like, okay, I'll wait to get there.
Because I went to the planet, but then before I got out of the ship, I just jumped back and went to Kashyyyk because it kind of felt like the natural third planet after Zepho, but because, it popped up along with Zepho. But going to the planet, the other characters are like, you sure you want to do this? This is a crazy fucking place,
Yeah.
So I think it's best suited for after Kashyyyk sometime, which it gives you the choice, but, is what it is. So, with all that being said, I've still only encountered 2 lightsaber colors, and so I'm rocking green.
Cool. So, for me, you actually got orange as a pre-order bonus, which
I didn't do. Important to note that I talked last week on the show about not getting Need for Speed Heat or Jedi Fallen Order from EA day one because of how bad I got screwed on their last games and those kind of respective series. And I literally waited till day 2 for Jedi Fallen Order, and then I was like, okay, at least I got the release day. Everybody's freaking out. It sounds like they didn't Battlefront this shit. And so that's when I jumped in. So no pre-order lightsaber.
Well, it's interesting because I dodged the bullet of Anthem, obviously. You didn't.
Nope.
So I'm trying to think. The last EA game that I bought that disappointed me was probably Andromeda. And I mean, disappointed is a strong word there. Like, it wasn't to the point of, like, Anthem for you, right? It wasn't, like, to that extent. Obviously didn't still hit the mark I expected of a Mass Effect game, but neither here nor there. So back to the orange lightsaber color. So when I got it, I was like, oh, that's really cool because you don't really see orange lightsabers. So I equipped it. The biggest problem with using an orange lightsaber is Cal is ginger. So it just doesn't feel right. It's weird. It's like, oh, the redheaded dude's rocking an orange lightsaber. It's like a very, like,
oh my gosh, you got me, Jerrad.
That took me out of it. You know what I mean? That completely removed any kind of immersion I was having because I was like, it just is bad. Like, if you were to see something Star Wars related and the ginger dude has an orange lightsaber, wouldn't you have a bit of an eye roll? You know what I mean? It's
that is so funny that you brought that up. I didn't even think about that. It is, dude. I've honestly, like, since you just, like, straight up called him a ginger, I'll be a little more delicate. I have thought about it being like, how many main character protagonists, not even of games, of even movies, can you think of that have red hair, that are men? Like, redheaded women are always in fashion, right? But, like, redheaded men they usually get the short end of the stick kind of thing, so
I think Archie in Riverdale's like the only shining example because he's like the heartthrob in that show, you know what I mean?
Right.
Other than that, I can't really.
That is a total dye job, they couldn't even get an actual so-called ginger on the show, That's another thing, is like you just don't see like a lot of redheaded men in Hollywood. So anyways, with all that being said, it has been interesting to see him in this big leading role, because the only other thing I know him from, which I didn't really watch, was Gotham, and he doesn't. The red hair isn't quite as prominent, maybe is the best way to put it. So, to the actual game, how about that? The combat, I think, is solid. It's another example for me, Jerrad, of people looking at From Software games and going, wow, this is fucking dope. Let's do this in our game, in our God of War, in our Jedi Fallen Order, But From Software is on another level when it comes to that specific game-making style and proficiency of combat creation. That is not something that many people in the world can fuck with. And Respawn Entertainment and the Sony Santa Monica's of the world, there's other games like this. These are great studios, and they make really great AAA, blockbuster, story-driven games, I should say. But they're not hard-nosed combat studios, and that is what fucking From Software is about. They specialize in that, and these other studios do not specialize in that. So when they try to come through and play in the Masters arena, they're just not up to par, right? And so it sounds like I'm being really harsh here. just to reiterate what I've said before on the show is just that these other studios are not up to par when it comes to the combat expertise that From Software has. And so when they try to take Bloodborne's combat and put it in God of War or Jedi Fallen Order, it's not quite there. Now, that doesn't mean that these games don't have solid combat. I definitely enjoy myself quite a bit in them, but they, to me, are mimicking something that they just aren't able to reach the heights of. So there is that. But I still, nonetheless, kind of wish that combat was a little more of a focus as opposed to like exploration and puzzle solving in this game. That is actually something that it borrows heavily from the God of War series, and even like more classic God of War than the reboot is the puzzle solving specifically, but also some of the exploration aspects of the game, which I'm enjoying. But like I said, I do wish, you're a fucking Jedi. I would love if it was more kind of on the From Software side of things, where combat is a bit more of the focal point of the experience. But nonetheless, I'm still glad to have a deep story, which I am enjoying quite a bit. 4 or 5 hours into the game, maybe a little more than that, but I think I've made it clear at this point that I've needed a bit of a rejuvenating experience when it comes to Star Wars, and I think I'm really getting that so far with both The Mandalorian first couple episodes and now first few hours of Jedi Fallen Order. So I'm very glad when it comes to the whole Star Wars of it all. We'll see about episode 9 here in a month or so, but from that aspect, I'm definitely enjoying it. And I do think it was worth the purchase. I'm cool that I bought it, and I'm excited to play it, and recently that hasn't always been the case with me when it comes to video games. So that may be the best praise I can give it, is just that I'm excited pretty much every night to come home from work and throw her on.
The thing I love about Respawn too is not only have they, so far in my experience too, and I think even by the time I finish this game, I doubt I'll be down on it by any means. I might have some more criticisms of it, but I doubt I'll be actually down on it. The thing with them is they finally delivered a Star Wars game that Star Wars fans or people who are just like partially interested in the franchise can be proud to say they're playing. It's not like I'm playing Battlefront 2, one of those kind of things.
Right.
And in the same year, they delivered a Battle Royale game for a more mature audience that can actually compete, quote unquote, obviously not literally, with Fortnite, because we had PUBG, but it isn't as polished as Apex Legends is, right? So shout out to Respawn. To the lightsaber point, I obviously blue's the default one. That's not a spoiler, it's in all the trailers and stuff. I went with green as well. It just felt right for him. I don't know. I went through both of them and I was like, am I feeling blue? Am I feeling green? Obviously I tried the orange. I was like, no. So yeah, I'm rocking green as well.
Orange for Jerrad. I think I'll end up with purple once I unlock it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Would you like to move on to Pokemon?
Yeah, so I've already beaten the game.
Ho ho!
I have 32 hours in it.
Good Lord. It hasn't even been a week.
No. And it's just because it's one of those, it being on the Switch and being handheld. I did play maybe an hour or an hour and a half on docked. But yeah, majority of the time it's just been like, I have some free time, let me pick it up. An
hour of those 32 hours was docked. Wow.
Yeah. And I think it's just like the muscle memory of I've always played Pokemon games handheld, you know what I mean? Right. So it's just it's home there. What I will say, and I know Dom would hate this because he's so down on the look of Animal Crossing and Pokemon.
Yeah.
For me, I think obviously this is a step in the right direction for Pokemon, and I would like it to take another step. But it's a really pretty game for a Pokemon game, and I hate to qualify it like that, but coming from Sword and Shield, I'm really enjoying it. I love the scope and the size of things, the way they look. Obviously, it's still you're exploring the same size of areas. Essentially, you don't have more room to explore outside of the wild area. Like I told you on I think it was last week's podcast, This is the first game I've ever done where I immediately boxed my starter Pokemon and ran with a team of 6 other Pokemon.
Dude, okay, let's jump in right there because I looked at them. I agree. Water's not great. The water line is not great. But I think the grass is cool, even though the middle one is a weird yellow color. I think he should be green.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm loving my fire evolution line. I went ahead just because you scared me. I went ahead and checked what the evolutionary line was because I like Scorbunny. So I was like, I could just keep him from evolving as Scorbunny. And then, dude, I don't know what the middle one's name is. But he looks like a goddamn Naruto fucking ninja shinobi. And I'm super into it. And I like the third one too.
So the middle evolution of Scorbunny, I think, is the best non-base design. Like, I think the 3 base designs for the starters are all cute. I think Scorbunny's middle evolution is far and away the best middle evolution.
Dude,
both
awesome.
Sobble and Grookey's middle evolution change color for some reason, and they're both ugly.
The yellow Grookey evolution looks bad. If they just made it green, I think it looks cool otherwise.
Scorbunny's final evolution is fine. I don't think it's terrible, but I have an anti-fire starter agenda that I've pushed for every generation.
Ultra pro fire starter agenda.
Yeah. And to me, I was like, I'm not going to get Scorbunny and level it up to its middle evolution. It just seemed like a waste of time when I can maybe spend some more time leveling up a Pokemon I do love. So what I did is I went in and I was like, I don't want to use any of these starters personally. I'm going to look at I'm going to not look at, but I'm going to explore and find, because I didn't know about any other new Pokemon outside of the ones they like promoted. So like Corviknight, the taxi cab bird, and maybe a couple of the other grass ones, and Dreadnought, which is the big turtle guy. But there was a bevy of new Pokemon that I didn't know about. So one of them is Toxel, who's a little like purple baby dinosaur guy that's...
You've beaten the game. If we can, I would like to not be spoiled on any Pokemon. I know what you're talking about, the one you just mentioned, but...
Okay.
And especially evolutions too, is like I've been really very careful media blackout about that, and it's been really fun so far. So
okay, so I'll just say on Toxel, he looks like a little baby dinosaur wearing a diaper, and for some reason it gave me the energy of the baby dinosaur from the show Dinosaurs back in the 90s.
Okay.
And that baby, most people don't know its name. I didn't know its name. I had to Google it. That baby character's name that says not the mama, his name's Sinclair, which I just thought was a cool, like, original-sounding Pokemon nickname. So I nicknamed it Sinclair. Okay. Not going to spoil its evolution. I'll leave it there. Yeah, but what I will say is it's a poison type as a base, and it turns into a dual type when it evolves, which is really cool.
That is cool.
Another cool thing about this game that I found out after the fact, because it's a cutscene you see when you beat the game, and this isn't spoilers, so don't worry. It's like a weird side little thing, is... So, obviously, Grookey's final evolution is playing drums, right? They made it a point in this game to have a set of about 4 or 5 different Pokemon that in their final evolution are music related. So at the end of the game, there's a band playing of Pokemon, and it makes sense based on what they're doing.
Spoilers.
It's like, it's not, I don't think it's spoilers. It's not like
you're talking about the end of the game. It's spoilers. I mean, I'm not upset by the spoiler, but it's spoilers.
It's like midway through the credits, as credits are going over the screen. It's just like a little cutesy.
Could not be more the end of the game.
Exactly. Yeah. I really enjoy a lot of the gym leaders. I thought the story for a Pokemon game was unique enough to what the other ones have done. There wasn't...
Just finished Fire Gym and got to the next town, did a couple little things.
Okay, so one thing, I know that there's different trainers for each version. Oh. I think I have the fighting gym leader and you have the ghost gym leader.
Gotcha.
Because the fighting gym leader is, if I was a weeaboo, I'd have a body pillow of her. She's super cool.
Holy goodness.
The only reason I'm saying that is it's a really cool design for a Pokemon gym leader in the sense of she has to be either Polynesian or something. She comes in, she's like a kickboxer. She has like gray hair, but like silvery gray hair. She's not like an old lady or anything, but just a really cool design. Probably my favorite gym leader in the game because her team, in comparison to gym leaders of previous games with fighting types, is a lot more varied and interesting. That's one thing I will say too, without spoiling it, is as you go on, the gym leaders do some interesting, unique things for a Pokemon game in the terms of how you fight them and how you set that up. And all the gyms in general,
what do you think
this
about
by now.
Dynamax?
I think Dynamaxing is lame. Gigantamaxing is really cool. So the difference there for people who don't know is Dynamaxing is the gimmick mechanic in this game where you hit your bracelet thing and your Pokemon grows 10 times its size. It gains some health, it gains some power, and it has access to Dynamax versions of moves. They're type-based. So if your Pokemon has 2 different electric moves and 2 different rock moves, when you Dynamax, those 2 electric moves are technically the same move. They're not different moves. When you Gigantamax, and this is when your Pokemon has a high enough Dynamax level, which is a separate thing you can upgrade through items you get in the game, and I think just through Dynamax fighting, like turning it into Dynamax. Gigantamax changes the physical appearance of certain Pokemon. At launch, people thought it was only like 8 Pokemon, but now that the game's been out in the wild, excuse me, there's been like, I think upwards of 20 that have had different various forms. Me personally playing through the game, I've seen about probably 12 to 15 of them, and they drastically change the look of Pokemon. You're not going to have Bay or Bia. Bay? B? B. I'm going to go with B. You're not going to have B in your game. That's the fighting gym leader, so I'm going to spoil this for you. I Googled it real quick. You don't have her in your game. You do have the ghost type. So her final Pokemon is Machamp. And Machamp's gigantic. So if you were to Dynamax Machamp, he'd just get big and he'd look like Machamp, just much larger with like a red highlight on him. The Gigantamax version of Machamp, and this isn't a good version because he's probably the least creative change, but he gets orange veins that float throughout his entire body. All 4 of his fists start glowing like they're on fire, and his face changes a little bit too and has like volcanic eyes.
So it's visually similar to what they were doing with the character designs in Mega Evolutions.
Yes, Gigantamax is Mega Evolutions. Dynamax is they just get bigger. That's the best way to describe it. Where there are physical changes. Some not so much and are not super interesting like Machamp. Some way cooler and way more interesting that I don't want to spoil for Jordan on this podcast where I talk about them. What I will say is I'm currently in the post game of it. Some interesting stuff going on. I haven't explored everything you could fully do. But what I will say in terms of there's this whole obviously national dex problem that people had where not all the Pokemon are in the game. I like that because this will be the first time in a Pokemon game where I'm going to try to hunt down and get everything in the national dex, and I can actually accomplish that because there's
you don't need to trade.
Exactly. I do need a trade because there's Pokemon not in Sword that are in Shield. But I don't need to go back to previous generations of Pokemon or anything like that. I had a blast with it. There's some quality of life things it does that are really great. The fact that you can access your Pokemon boxes from anywhere and you don't have to go to a PC is like one of the best solutions. And I know people are saying that's something they should introduce ages ago. And like, yeah, we can sit here and say that about a lot of stuff, but I don't really think that kind of conversation is interesting. The fact that they finally added it, I think, is good. And it shows that they understand that they have to change because Pokemon is such a franchise that moves at a snail's pace in terms of adding and changing things, that them actually changing something like this is good. I haven't explored the wild area enough to give full comprehensive thoughts, but I have played enough time in it to say that I do think it is a step in the right direction once again. There's been some people who have said it didn't meet their expectations and it was overhyped. For me, I never got that. I never felt it was overhyped. I never felt that they pushed it as some Breath of the Wild-esque thing. I just never got that personally. It never felt like that. People said it wasn't as big as they thought. I thought it was, for me, it was bigger than I thought. And maybe that's coming from the point of, I understand the franchise in terms of, going back to what I just said, them moving so slow in terms of doing new innovative things, that when I heard, oh, there's going to be a new wild area, the pessimist in me, the contrarian, was like, oh, it'll be a decently sized area. So I thought of it as smaller than what it actually was, you know?
So let me give you my current party, Jerrad.
Okay.
And I would say most of these are my best Pokemon. I've got a couple in the box right now that I just needed to make room for lower levels to train some. Real quick, what do you think about the essentially having like the EXP share introduced into this game?
I think it
Where
makes the game
everybody in the party gets experience points whether they battle or not, which was a thing only reserved to the. Was it EXP all was the item in previous games where everyone would get some?
Yeah, and there was EXP share that you could give to a specific Pokemon.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I would say it makes the game a lot more accessible to people and less grindy, which I do appreciate.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It does make the game easier if you understand type advantages and you can set up a party of Pokemon you like because you can ride with that crew throughout the game. It makes breeding or trying to get the national dex easier because I can put a group of guys I'm trying to evolve and level up in my party and I have to worry about using them and swapping out. So I do think it's a balancing act. Like I said, I think it makes the game a lot more accessible. I think it makes the game a lot less grindy. I never found myself at any point grinding this game. I naturally leveled up at the pace of hitting these gyms at the right time. So I think both of those outweigh the fact that it makes the game easier because to this point, I haven't played Pokemon for the difficulty because it's never gotten more difficult. You understand what I'm saying? If they had shown that the game would progressively get more and more difficult, I'd be disappointed that this was a step back. But because that hasn't been the case with the Pokemon franchise, I'll take the accessibility and the removal of unnecessary grind. And the cool thing with that too, though, Jordan, is because all of my Pokemon are leveling up, I never felt the need to lean on one specific Pokemon. I could interchange them and move them back and forth because it's not like, oh, I'm battling. Okay, for instance, the Grass Gym was your first gym too, right?
Yeah.
So say I had a fire starter, right? Score Bunny. Yeah. Go into the Grass Gym. I'm like, okay, heading to there. I'm like, okay, I see that the first gym's a Grass Gym. I'm going to level up my Score Bunny a bit so he's stronger so I can have the type advantage and go through. Then by the time you finish the Grass Gym, if you don't have the XP share, he's so much far leveled ahead that you're like, well, do I spend time grinding these lower level guys or do I just continue with Score Bunny? And then you get to a point where you're just using Score Bunny because he's so far ahead of the other Pokemon that it's not worth going to grind, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I will say this has got to be the easiest Pokemon game I've ever played, and that is really saying something because they are easy fucking games. If they were going to do this EXP all transition to where that's always turned on, I wish they would have given us difficulty options because I feel like you really need it at that point.
What I will say is this is the first Pokemon game in a good while that I died on the final champion multiple times before beating him, knowing type advantages and having Pokemon type advantages. Wow. And what I mean by that without spoiling the champion is that it was really well designed in the fact that there's Pokemon that have moves that counteract weaknesses. So this isn't one of his Pokemon. I don't want to spoil it for you. So for instance, say you're facing a water type Pokemon. Right. Well, your assumption is, never mind. I'm not going to use water. I'm trying to use something. Okay.
Electric.
So you're facing a fire type Pokemon, and you're like, okay, for sure, I'm going to use my Dreadnought or my Sobble. Obviously, Final Evolution of Sobble, whatever the hell it is, Inteleon. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to use fire against water. Got it. Unlock. Turns out that fire type Pokemon may know an electric move. Then guess what happens?
The mixing of types is what changes that up.
Exactly. And in Dynamax and Gigantamax form, certain moves can change to work like other moves. So Solar Beam, for instance, is a normal type move in this game, but the moment a Pokemon that has it Gigantamaxes, it works like a grass type move.
That is weird.
And that comes in handy later on in the game too. So yeah, it's not super difficult. I do wish it's to the point now. Pokemon needs to understand that they do have their demographic is young kids and a huge generation of people who are older that play the games, And I do
Yeah,
think
man.
that they
Like, quit acting like it's only kids playing this shit.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so I'm hoping we might get that in like a DLC update type of thing. That would be cool if there's like a Master Quest version. But my party is a level 31 Machoke.
cool.
I have a level 28 Growlithe.
Okay.
I have. Do you want to know nicknames?
If you want, sure, it's up to you.
Machoke is Uppercut.
Okay.
Growlithe is Flame Claw.
Okay.
Raboot, which is the evolution of Scorbunny, which is a bad name, who looks like a shinobi from Naruto Shippuden, is named Sparktail.
Cool.
Eevee is just Sylvie. Vulpix is named Nazca after Nazca of the Valley of the Wind, the Studio Ghibli movie. And then my Dreadnought is named Sharpshell.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I'm surprised you're rocking two OG guys in Machoke and Growlithe.
Dude, and I've honestly, and Vulpix, I've honestly been rocking a lot of OG characters. And Eevee, Jared. I've got 4 out of 6 are original 151. So, big into that. I think they're cooler Pokemon than the newer ones, personally, is the biggest reason why. And then the 2 that I do have in here are cooler, newer ones. I also really love the 2 new Fox Pokemon, or the Fox Pokemon that has an evolution.
Thievul?
Thievul, yeah. So, what's the first one?
No clue. I just
Can't
remember
remember,
the second evolution.
But it's like they're still like mining cool creative things out of like a fox, where like if you read the description, its tail is like a broom almost for when it like steals something, because foxes steal things, it steals something and then wipes away its paw prints with its like sweeping tail. It's really cool stuff. And his evolution is very cool. So I would say so far, yeah, the new Pokemon, I'm not ultra impressed, but there's certainly cool ones. I mean, that's pretty much how any Pokemon generation is. But
I wish I could share my party with you and give you nicknames, but looking at him, 4 of the 6 are Pokemon you probably haven't run into yet, so I don't want to spoil this for you. But what I will say is,
for the best. I appreciate that.
My Dreadnought, I named Franklin, for obvious
Franklin
reasons.
the Turtle.
Yeah.
Danklin the Turtle. Look
Danklin.
up those memes if you want to good laugh. So yeah, just kind of wrapping up my Pokemon thoughts, I'll say this. You talk about the franchise moving at a snail's pace, and I think that's what's most disappointing about this game. I am certainly enjoying myself. Probably not nearly as high on it as you are. I'm like 10 hours in, I would say. Just finished the 3rd gym. And yeah, it's just the fact that my brother was sitting over here last night, and I was like, dude, the game that taught me how to read when I was 3 or 4 years old, Pokemon Red and Blue versions, is not that fucking different from this game that I'm playing now, Pokemon Shield. Like, really, when you get down to brass tacks, they have not changed very much at all. And the very few, I would say, quality of life improvements are nice, but they could be a lot. Just like I was saying with Borderlands, it's cool that they have a couple of little things in there, but as far as this series has been, or as long as this series has been going on, I wish that there was a little bit more to it than what we got. I think, Nintendo games are not, to me, they're like closer to like what we get as a AA game on other systems. Now, they're certainly more polished than that, but you're not going to get voice acting usually. You're not going to get like the graphics aren't going to be as good because it's on a less powerful system, so it looks like a AA game from the PS4. If you're playing like Fire Emblem or whatever. there's a lot of stuff about it for me that is just not all the way there, because they're not making games for the AAA audience, even though the AAA audience in a lot of ways butters their breads and buys those games and plays them. You know, it would be nice to be catered to a little bit more, because I just feel like, yeah, this is like a kind of a half step. They wanted to get a Pokemon game out within a couple years of the Switch being out. I get that. I wish they had not done Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, because I would have liked that time spent pouring into this game a little bit more, because the visuals I don't like as much as you, Jerrad. I think that they are pretty and colorful for the most part, but they are extremely simplistic and a lot of really rough textures, kind of similar to Fire Emblem earlier this year on Switch. And a big thing for me is that with this being the first console Pokemon, you know, I get that there's certain things that would be too far-fetched to ask for, right? But like when the game's starting and then it's like the first cutscene, and then the Rose, the commissioner or whatever the fuck he is, starts talking, and he's like doing the opening cutscene, but there's no sound coming out of his mouth, and it's just text popping up on the bottom of the screen. It's like it's taking me out of it, because I feel like this is the first Pokemon game on console. Now, whether you had 2 years or 10 years to make this game, you could have recorded voice acting. I mean, that's not that fucking difficult. Nintendo acts like voice acting is the hardest thing in the world to do, because even when they do it in Zelda, they only do it in half the fucking game, and it's still just people making noises and text boxes for most of the game. So that is starting to get on my nerves as far as Nintendo goes, because I think it's about fucking time that we just had voice acting in the games. Like, I don't think that's that difficult, and I don't think it's going to break their universes with Mario and Link talking as much as people might think it will. I think it's just a step that needs to be taken. And it's not just voice acting. I think that there are other things like the animations for the Pokemon. Some of them are so fucking cool. Like, my Raboot has has a really cool flame move where he runs and jumps in the air and does a flying like sideways kick and swipes his leg across, and it looks so cool when he does it. And then he has another one, double kick, where it's supposed to be him kicking, and he just like jumps up, like boop boop, just jumps up a tiny little bit into the air, and then there's a foot imprint on the Pokemon across from him, and it's just, man, like,
you should
it's
see
so lazy, man, because there's obviously tons of Pokemon, but they're drawing from a pool of moves, right? So it's like they don't all have individualistic moves, and so yeah, you see the same moves over and over again, and some of them are really fucking cool, and some of them are utterly simplistic, and just I don't understand why they couldn't put a little more effort into it. But sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can't wait for you to see the soccer-inspired move that you get for the fire starter late in the game, because cool. Obviously there's another character who rocks it in the game since I didn't pick it. It's really cool. It's really cool.
There's like really cool ones like Quick Attack. They do the Dragon Ball Z like teleport because they're moving so fast, and they bash into the other Pokemon. It's like really, really cool. And then you see the other ones, like I said, double kick with Scorbunny. He just like hops the tiniest little hop. Like, you don't even need to be a bunny to hop that much. And it's just very simplistic and quite lazy, if you ask me. And there's other things like that in the game. Like the characters, I wish the characters looked more like the Pokemon anime, because that actually has some character to it, oddly enough. And these characters, like, they look like anime characters, not the Pokemon anime. They just look like super, like, low budget, basic looking anime characters to me for the most part. And obviously their animations are nothing to write home about. So I would just like to see a little more effort put into this Pokemon series. I think you guys have made enough money on it at this point to give them a little bit of a budget. and I would like for it to go from being like this, like almost classic old school style where there's no voice acting and you're just reading text on a screen and the characters don't animate very much. I'd like it to go from that to being a fully fledged console RPG that still holds the core tenets of Pokemon but it doesn't feel like it's stuck in the past like this game does in so many ways. There's a lot I love about it, but a lot of it is just like, I mean, a lot of things are just like HD versions of what we were getting on the Game Boy Color in the 90s. You know, like the battle animation screens and the naming conventions of the characters. Like, you're battling Lass Christina, you know, you're battling Biker Jerrad, whatever. You know, it's like, not everything needs to remain the same. Not everything needs to be this like hallowed tradition of cute little Pokemon hallmarks. You know, like, some of these things can change and we can still have that core Pokemon experience without it starting to, honestly, it's felt stale for years at this point. And the fact that they brought it to a home console and finally did that home RPG that everybody's been asking for all these fucking years. And to me, it's just an HD version of what you could already play on the 3DS for years at this point. There's differences from like Sun and Moon to this, but there's not a whole lot on here. If you didn't just like downgrade the resolution, I'm not sure that you couldn't fit this on a 3DS if you kind of just like tweaked a few things. Obviously, like perspectives would have to change, this, that, and the other. But you're not pushing anything outside the boundaries of a handheld console, which that's what the Switch is supposed to do. It's supposed to be a handheld console that can push into the boundaries of a home console, and that's not what they're doing here, which is the biggest disappointment for me.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is I do not envy their position for the simple fact that we've seen the amount of backlash they've gotten for simply saying that the entire Pokédex isn't going to be in this game, and the vitriol and internet hate that they got for that, which is like, that's something that's neither here nor there to me. I could give two shits about. You made a lot of salient points that to me actually matter. So it's like, to some extent, I understand why they're so afraid of changing from the past, because they do something like this and they see how badly everyone reacts to it. Yeah.
There's plenty of fucking Pokemon in the game, okay, guys? Like,
exactly.
There are plenty, and there's plenty, like, you saw my party was just stacked with OG characters. Like, you can get the ones that you want for the most part. Now, can you get every single one, every single legendary from every single generation? No, but why? Why do you need that? Just so you can go, hey, look at my screen right here. I'm going to show you my party. And I'm going to scroll through and you can see that I have a fucking Articuno from 20 years ago. Like, who really gives a fuck, you know?
Well, I think that's cool to have, but the problem is...
It's cool to have, but, like, it's not something that you can carry on to, like, the rest of the internet and, like, it's going to be a badge on your Facebook profile and all this other shit. Like, it's just in that game, you know?
But the thing is, like, if people want to have that, that's cool. What I was going to say is, if you care that much about it, you have Pokemon Bank. Pokemon Home is eventually coming, and they'll live in that. Like, if you care that much, you already have systems in place to where you're saving those Pokemon.
Where you can show it off. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't yeah, people are idiots.
And that's all it is. It's just showing off. You know, people just, like I said, want to show somebody their screen and be like, dude, there's an Articuno in my fucking party. Like, no one else has that. Sure, great. But it's not even like an achievement on a profile somewhere. Like, once we move on to the next Nintendo system, like, no one's going to know that you had an Articuno, just as an example, you know?
Well, they will, because Pokemon Home will probably be there too, because that's going to... If it's
but not in like an actual game sense, is what I'm saying. And you're not going to have a PlayStation trophy or an Xbox achievement saying that you got that. You know, it's like...
That's it that sucks the most, man.
Good at like archiving your achievements, guys. Quit worrying about what Pokemon you have in the latest game. Like,
or worry about it, but don't
show them. You've brought them over all these other times. Like, you might have them on Pokemon Sun and Moon. Just show people that Articuno. You know.
Yeah,
you got it. You fucking caught the Pokemon, dude. Then we don't have to have all 18,000 in one game. It's ridiculous.
And I still wouldn't agree with it, but I'd understand it more if we didn't already have the announcement of Pokemon Home coming to Switch, right? Of like, there's going to be a tangible way to save all of them. And these type of stuff that these people complain about, it just drowns out the actual changes that people want made to these games. So, anyways, we talked about Jedi Fallen Order.
Be working on.
Yeah, exactly. Talked about Pokemon. We're gonna move on to the news here. Next
Real
week,
quick,
obviously...
Jared, can I just talk about one more video game?
Okay.
Very fast. I also purchased Need for Speed Heat,
which got pretty decent reviews, and the team celebrated that they had seen the highest player base they have seen in like 7 years or something crazy.
Which is great, and I'm really glad for them. I am enjoying my time with the game. It's a solid Need for Speed game. But the problem is, Jared, it's exactly what you were talking about last week with these certain franchises where it's like, okay, I don't like what they're doing with the franchise now, so can we just get this entry out so we can step the fuck over that and move on, right? Well, that's what we've needed to do with Need for Speed since Need for Speed 2015, right? But in 2017, we got this thing that sent us back into the fucking dark ages, you know, one step forward and two steps back, right, is what we did. And so now Need for Speed Heat, basically all it's done is like gotten us back to good. It's not like blowing your socks off like, wow, this is what Need for Speed could be. Wow, this is where Need for Speed's going in the future. No, they just got it back to being a good game again, which is great, and I'm glad. But most of the features that they implemented, a lot of the features that they implemented, the big ones, are just bringing back stuff that they yanked out for Payback that people freak the fuck out about, and that they're like, oh, okay, we'll bring that back for this game. So really, they're just making it feature complete again. It's not even like flourishing and pushing on into the new generation or whatever you want to call it. Maybe we'll get that, here in a couple years on the next gen. But that is what's saddening. Not necessarily disappointing about this specific game because it didn't do anything wrong, right? But it just sucks that this is great, but it's pretty much just on par with Need for Speed Rivals and Need for Speed 2015, the other great Need for Speed games this gen. And it is really just kind of digging us out of the hole that Payback put us in. So that's the unfortunate reality of that. I'll have more opinions on it in the weeks to come as I, get further into it and actually am driving better cars and stuff like that. But at least, if nothing else, man, it's this cool neon Need for Speed type thing, Vice City style. I dig that. At least we've got a good Need for Speed game, and they pulled out the microtransactions, which is great. But like I said, I want to see where we're moving forward. Not just get back to square one.
And on the bright side, it releasing this year means that there's zero chance it'll be a launch game for next gen, which is good. Because obviously launch games don't have the best track record of, they're good at the best.
Need for Speed Rivals was 2014, a year later, but that's, launch window-ish type of thing.
Yeah.
And man, fuck, dude. There's a lot of people still playing that game.
That's a year after, though. That's launch window. I'm talking thank God we're not going to have a Need for Speed game launching day and date with the new consoles. You know what I mean? That kind of third-party situation. Sure. We went for quite a while on Fallen Order and Pokemon, which isn't surprising because we have a lot of interest in both of those franchises. So, good discussion. Let's hop into the quickie news here. There wasn't any major news story, but we're going to go through all of these. Some more interesting than others, but I thought all of them were at least worthy enough to mention here. First off, Minecraft became the first Microsoft game to sell 1 million units in Japan. So that's really cool. Obviously,
very interesting.
Microsoft doesn't have a huge footing in Japan.
Nothing, dude.
Yeah.
1 million units, Microsoft. You guys have been struggling.
For Japan, I think it's a good mark though.
I don't know.
For the country?
Gotta be I just feel like there's gotta be other games, Western created games that are selling multiple millions of copies in Japan, no problem.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. Can't argue that. It's just that their foothold there is so small, unfortunately, that like.
That's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Is like, holy shit. Now, Phil Spencer has done a lot this generation to turn things around for Xbox and Microsoft in Japan, but my God, it is like when you hear about some of the stuff that has gone on over there, and like the reason that we even got an Xbox Slim controller on the OG Xbox was because Japan was not having the Duke. They were not about that big bulky shit in their tiny cramped Tokyo apartments. So like, not that a controller's taking up your whole apartment, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
they were just not about that shit, and so they've had the struggle going for a long time. We'll see if they can ever gain a foothold, but you know, Japan is not moving more towards home console gaming, so Microsoft is, you know, that is their focus with the Xbox, seemingly with the next Xbox that we're going to get. So,
But
that's a
XCloud
tough-
could be their foot in the door,
tough
their
place to
like
be.
their backdoor entry there, right? Of streaming, where
Certainly a
you don't need to own an
possibility.
Xbox. Yeah,
Yeah,
could be a way. Also, they expressed interest in if buying a Japanese studio or founding a Japanese studio. So
yeah.
Um,
They could, it's weird, man. Like when they try to do exclusive games that are from Japan on Xbox, it always seems to go weird, you know, scale bound or whatever. But we'll see. Best of luck to them.
Blue Dragon was pretty well received.
I mean,
And obviously- Jade
yeah,
Empire
but,
wasn't Japanese developed. That was.
But Blue
BioWare.
Dragon is a Xbox 360 exclusive from a long time ago. Like, and Lost Odyssey and stuff like that. Like, people bring those games up, but it's like, clearly they're few and far between. And also, if it's been that long since we have good examples, they clearly don't have the foothold, like we said, that they would like to, I'm sure, if you talk to Phil Spencer.
And thankfully for Phil Spencer, in the last 5 years, 5 years, because 4 years, because it was 2015, I think, when he took over. You look at the track record of, he has bringing Kingdom Hearts to Xbox. He has Final Fantasy to Xbox. Now he has Yakuza to Xbox. There's Nier to Xbox.
Final Fantasy 13 was on Xbox, so that was back in 360.
Yeah, classic Final Fantasy. Sorry. And what was the MMO that they announced last year at E3 that's coming to Xbox? Ben Moore from Easy Allies loves it. What the heck is it called?
Fantasy
Man,
Star
the name's
Online.
escaping. Fantasy Star Online. Yeah, so he's made a good amount of groundwork in the 4 years. He always talks about flying
Devil
over
May
to
Cry,
Japan.
dude.
So
Yeah, they've honestly worked a lot of wonders. Yeah.
Yeah. Next up, former Arkane Studios directors Rafael Colatino and Julian Rabi announced their new independent studio called Wolfeye Studios. The coolest thing about this is they put up a teaser image, and they stated that the reveal of their game is going to be at the Game Awards. So
Yep.
we're going to be seeing a first look at their indie game.
Yep.
Obviously, Arkane Studios, the guys behind Dishonored, among other things. Obviously, people love their immersive sim stealth action. I know Dom
Yeah.
does. Dom's a huge fan. Next up, this one is kind of troublesome. Campo Santo, if you're not familiar, were the developers of Firewatch. They unveiled 1 year ago at the Game Awards, their next game that was called In the Valley of the Gods, right? Really beautiful game. Looks like two archaeologist women out in Egypt looking for something. Looked really beautiful. Obviously has their distinct art style from Firewatch. Well, people had noticed that in February of this year, when they were purchased by Valve, if you didn't know, Campo Santo was purchased by Valve, the lead artist, who's Jane Ing, I believe is her last name, and a couple of the other leads on the game all had working on In the Valley of the Gods in their bios, right? Because they were so proud of the game, they had revealed it, yada, yada, yada. Well, about a month ago, the game's title was removed from all of their Twitter bios, and they just now say that they're working at Valve, and the game has kind of disappeared from Valve's official website. So
Very weird.
people
And
are
they were
worried.
all talking, like, when they got acquired, weren't they talking about how this was going to help them do even greater things with that game specifically and have even more creative freedom with that game.
Yep. And if you don't know, Valve has built a recent, I guess not recent, but has built a track record of being known as the place where all of these projects are occurring, but nothing ever sees the light of day, and they're always canned. So people are worried that might happen within the Valley of the Gods. There's no confirmation yet, but for the lead artist and the lead producer to have that as a badge of honor on their Twitter bio, and then all of a sudden remove that.
I mean, these guys, this is an indie studio. This is not Respawn Entertainment, who's working on Star Wars games and Apex Legends and, maybe the next mainline Titanfall, where if you take that off your Twitter bio and you work at Respawn, you take off Apex from your Twitter bio, it's like, oh, they probably just moved him over to the next mainline Titanfall or whatever.
Their unannounced project. Yeah, this is an indie studio working on one game at a time.
This is an indie studio working on one fucking game, and now apparently none of the people at that studio are working on that game. Well, sounds like a cancellation to me.
My worry is that Valve was like, hey, yeah, we want you to finish that game, but we want you to go over here and, work on this Half-Life
VR experiences we've been thinking about.
Yeah. That wasn't in the news this week. They announced a new Half-Life VR game. I'm sorry, I'm just not somebody who cares about that. I think Valve needs to understand that there's an entire generation of people who don't care. Like, I forgot what it was on, but somebody was making the argument that, I think it was Gary Whitta. If you're familiar with Gary Whitta, writer of Rogue One, amongst a lot of other things, he's often on the Kind of Funny Games Daily.
Book of Eli.
He said that he believes that Half-Life is Valve's biggest IP in terms of games. Personally, my personal opinion is I would strongly disagree with that. I think that Left 4 Dead or Portal would be their most popular. If you're talking about the mid to late Team Fortress as well. Even then, I think more people pop culture knows about Left 4 Dead than Team Fortress.
What about, aren't they Dota?
Dota as well, exactly. Yeah, there's tons of other arguments.
It's easily Dota. It is easily Dota. I know we're not into that style of game, but that's where it is.
I from a sheer people playing the game, I agree with you. From take 100 people off the street and name these game titles and which one do they recognize, I would say most people would recognize Portal or Left 4 Dead over all of those. But Dota obviously has a tremendous player base.
Half-Life in the fucking basement for 15, 18 years, and nobody in pop culture recognizes it, That's
and
how it works.
I think it's a perspective of somebody who's older who grew up with Half-Life and saw its heyday when it was the biggest thing. It was the shooter, right, on PC. And because they haven't done anything with the property, I think a lot of people in the industry that are older, because it does skew older now, they don't understand. Like, most of my friends, they can name tons of video game IPs, even ones they don't play. A lot of them wouldn't really be familiar with Half-Life, man. A lot of them.
And a lot of gamers don't recognize that. When we talk about Half-Life 3 all the fucking time, it's just, there is a very small group of people, or I won't even say that. There is a group of people in the gaming community who care a lot about seeing the release of Half-Life 3. There is a much larger group that care about hearing about the release of Half-Life 3, right? Like, they would just like to see it happen. And then there's an even bigger part of the gaming community that doesn't give a fuck.
It's like, okay, cool, Half-Life 3. That's a meme I heard about once. Yeah. Next up, Nintendo. Speaking of Pokemon, Nintendo has reported that in its first 2 days, Pokemon Sword and Shield have become the fastest-selling Nintendo Switch title to date. In 2 days, they sold through 6 million copies, which is actually pretty important. Sold through means to consumers. A lot of times companies report sold in numbers, which are shipped. This is sold through, which in my personal opinion is more impressive because it's directly in the hands of the consumers.
Now, Jerrad, real quick, do you think, I'm a little worried about this because now I'm thinking that they may have gone into this going, okay, we're going to do Sword and Shield. It's going to get us on the Switch. We'll be there. We'll have a game out on the system. And then we can go from there and maybe build a Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey style Pokemon game. I'm worried that they're looking at these numbers and going, fucking just keep milking that Pokemon train that we've been on for 20 fucking years, man.
I think
30
that
years.
Junichi Masuda, who's obviously the game director for Pokemon, and a lot of those producers there, first of all, they likely don't care about the money aspect of it or the sales because that doesn't affect their job in any real tangible way. I think what really affected them, honestly, was not the hateful trolley feedback from people, but the actual fans who have voiced that they wanted more from this game. And
Yeah.
I don't think that this hurts the pace at which they were planning to evolve the franchise. Okay. I'm just not sure if the pace is as fast as we wanted, if that makes sense. I don't think this has any bearing on that. Another note to this, in its first 2 days, obviously we talked about how it sold through 6 million units. 2 million of those were specifically in the United States, which is really good. And that opening alone makes it the 8th best-selling game on Switch for those 2 days. So more than likely, this game is going to shoot to the top. Pokemon games always do. They're gold. No matter how, I mean, they're never terrible. Oftentimes they're never great. They're always, for the most part, good. And no matter what, they sell like hotcakes, man. Fly off the shelves.
Are we gonna have another spin-off next year? 2020?
I can't answer that question without spoiling the game, Jordan. When you finish the game, we can have that discussion.
Oh, I didn't even think about like a third version, like Pokemon Spear or whatever.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that when you finish the game.
Wait. Go ahead and tell me, because there's a very big chance that I don't really finish Pokemon games. I don't even finish a lot of games, period. So
one of the neater this isn't super spoiler. One of the neater parts about this game is they introduce some side characters that go through a process of starting to train with other gym leaders to eventually take over for them. So my assumption is playing through that, and some characters, I'm going to spoil this bit for you because it's not hugely important to the story. You know Sonia?
Do it.
She's the scientist, the redheaded scientist girl. Yeah. By the end of the game, she takes over for her grandma as like the professor of the region, right? So that's one character I assume in the third version she's going to actually be set in stone, the professor. There's another character who's training with one of the gym leaders because that gym leader isn't necessarily in the best spot to continue being the gym leader. So I guarantee you in the third version, they're going to take over that gym, right? They'll be the gym leader of that gym. There's another person who has a relative who is the gym leader who might not be in the best place to continue being the gym leader. And she necessarily doesn't train with that person, but you talk to her a lot and you kind of figure out like, oh, she'll probably be the gym leader in the third version of the game. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that's like, it could easily be nothing, or it could be they're setting this up so there's a little bit enough of a change so they can sell that third version with some changes to what's going on, Now,
if we don't get, let's say, Pokemon Spear next year, Pokemon Axe, are we getting, Pokemon Let's Go 2?
I believe the Pokemon company said that they don't have any immediate plans to make any follow-up Let's Go games. I could have sworn I saw that on a headline. Could have just been a mistaken quote or something, but I could have sworn I saw that.
Are we getting a Pokemon game next year, Jerrad, on the Switch?
Yes. Mainline, I don't know. I wouldn't doubt if we got
would you consider Pokemon Spear to be mainline?
Yes. The third version is always mainline. We might see Pokemon Pixel Cross. We might see something weird. We could see Pokemon Spear. I'd be interested to see if they evolve on specifically the wild area because that is so tied to the Galar region that we get a Sword and Shield 2 situation just like we did with Black and White and Black and White 2. And that'd be really interesting if they use that as like, okay, we nailed the wild area in this. Let's take it to the next level. Because for them to do Black and White 2 and just put a 2 on the end of it was pretty crazy, for the Pokemon franchise. That never happened. They always changed the name. Right. So if they want to expand specifically on the wild area concept, I wonder if they would do that. Or, I mean, the United States is a pretty big country. Imagine how wild that would be if the game where we do see a tangible change in the wild area is next level, right? that it takes place in a United States style region, because obviously the regions are all based on real world locations. Interesting.
We getting DLC for this game? Substantial DLC, not just like extra Pokemon.
I don't think so. I think we could see an update where they add like
items.
Gen 1 Pokemon or something, but nothing substantial now. Lastly, this is the last bit of news before we close out. Supposed images of the DualShock 5 have leaked. Jordan, did you get a glimpse of these? From the Japanese patent office.
I was actually looking at the supposed, well, I guess it's pretty much confirmed, the PS5 dev kits I was looking at today.
Yeah. So this new controller includes bigger triggers, smaller sticks, a USB port, no light bar at all. They're removing that. And this is something that you'll understand, but maybe listeners might have a hard time understanding what I'm saying by this. The grip on the handles of the controller, Jordan, you know how on the DualShocks they're more cylindrical, whereas on the Xbox they're more of like a triangle, like a Dorito chip shape? You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
The DualShock 5's handles look more wider.
Sharp.
They look like it looks more like an Xbox controller than a PlayStation controller. They've made them a little bit more girthy and less cylindrical, tubey on them, according to that patent. Obviously,
so
that patent
a little bit
isn't
sharper feel to it.
They're just like a meteor.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, this design, I can see what you're saying. Still got that giant touchpad, bro.
Yeah, they removed the light bar, kept the touchpad. This isn't super confirmed, but the fact that it came from the Japanese patent office and there's some other things leading to it, it's from Sony. It's a Sony patent. Is like, yeah, this is probably more than likely a DualShock 5. Triggers are bigger, not much bigger. Obviously, with the headlines, they want people to like freak out, so they just say bigger triggers. That makes you think that they're way larger. They're not. They're subtly larger. Sticks, once again, they're not extremely smaller. They're subtly smaller. The biggest change is obviously no light bar and the handle shapes. But even those aren't that drastic. It's not like it's not now an Xbox controller, you know. It's just slightly different than the DualShock 4.
Yeah. Still
Any
staying
thoughts?
in the family. Still staying in the family with the most likely having the DualShock name and look and feel of it as well. So, yeah, not a whole lot to say there. But we'll see about that haptic feedback. We'll see if it's, you know, something to write home about. But, you know, I can't be upset here because I certainly dig the fuck out of the DualShock 4. I think pound for pound, you know, just looking at everything generally, I would say my favorite controller of all time. So looking like we're headed in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, and for me, it's the Xbox One, and I already know that my controller is going to work on the next Xbox, which is dope.
Yeah.
And I doubt that the next Xbox's controller is going to be any different than the current one. So
I'd like it to be a little bit bigger. Go back to the size of the 360 controllers because my meat hands kind of get claw-like around that smaller controller.
That's been it for this week's show, guys. Thank you guys for listening. In terms of what we're going to be playing, more Jedi Fallen Order for me. Going to be working towards that National Dex now and finishing the post-game stuff. It's not my priority now. I'm shifting my priority to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but still going to be enjoying both of those. I want to get Jedi Fallen Order done in the next week or so that way I can hit my backlog of a couple of, like, I want to get to Metro and there's, I think, a couple other games I want to get to, Remnant from the Ashes, during our extended holiday break. For those of you who don't know, before Jordan lets us know what he's going to be playing, we're going to have some pre-recorded stuff in December, some evergreen stuff talking about predictions for next year and a lot of other things. We will be doing a reactions podcast to what happens at the Game Awards, but pretty much everything else in December will be pre-recorded evergreen stuff, and we'll be coming back in the new year with our Game of the Year discussion and stuff like that. So stay tuned for all of that. We'll see Dom next week as well. Jordan, more Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Pokemon, Need for Speed, maybe? You gonna dive back in?
I'm certainly gonna play all of these games more, but now that I kind of just had that rush last weekend of being like, yeah, I'm having a fun time with Pokemon, but it's been a week and Need for Speed seems to be turned around from Payback. Maybe I'll go ahead and download that. What's $60? Between friends, me and EA. Um, but then I was like, you know what? Because I was talking about it with you last week on the show. Like, what's even cooler than having a brand new awesome game that you're loving is having two that you can bounce back and forth between. And what's better than two, Jerrad? Three.
Yep.
So I just went ahead. It was all on Saturday. I was like playing through Pokemon that came out on Friday. Obviously preloaded that, but jumped into Need for Speed earlier in the day, and then by the evening I was jumping into Fallen Order. And I think this is probably how I'm gonna do games from now on. I'll miss out on the orange lightsaber pre-orders, in the future, but yeah, with how quick I can download a game at this point in the game, I guess I think I'll probably just like be waiting for reviews a lot more and jumping in on later on day one, or maybe on day 2 or 3 for some of these games, maybe even further on down the road. But all that to be said, yeah, I'll certainly be playing at least some of all 3 of those games at some point this week. And Pokemon is something that I've just been putting on my second TV screen while I watch Star Wars Clone Wars. I didn't get to talk about earlier, but that is certainly how I'm going to be doing that game. And it's clearly not a story-driven type thing, right, that you need to hear cutscenes or anything. I've still got the music coming through my TV speakers over there, so I can hear that. I will say I'm not in love with it. Once again, kind of a disappointment that they didn't bring it on the console with some actual instruments as opposed to like really MIDI sounding tracks. But yeah, Jedi Fallen Order is the Star Wars game that I fucking needed. I don't know about you, Jerrad. I know you're not as into Star Wars maybe as I am, but it was the game that I needed from the Star Wars universe, and the Force is with it, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I didn't play Battlefront 2, so I didn't have that bother me. And then we're obviously on, I wouldn't say polar opposites, but we're definitely on different ends of the Last Jedi spectrum. But
every day, my opinion goes down on that movie.
But we're both really enjoying Mandalorian. We're both enjoying Jedi Fallen Order. We'll see how episode 9 fares. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. Sorry, I thought you were my bad.
I do love fucking Star Wars, and so I do kind of like to take stock of that every now and then of like, where are we with Star Wars? And so if JJ can just pull it out, just get across the fucking finish line in this trilogy from my perspective, and certainly plenty of others, then I'm going to be really happy with that, Jerrad, because it means we're walking into 2020, taking a break from the films, which I'm so okay with. We so need that. We've had, Star Wars movies every consecutive year since 2015, and so I'm glad that we're going to do that.
And I think even if you enjoy the new trilogy like I do, or you're somebody who's hit or miss with it like you, I also agree, like, it's great to have that time to breathe, right? And it's not going to be, we're not going to be devoid of Star Wars content. We're going to be getting a new season of Rebels, right, in February?
Clone Wars.
Clone Wars. We're
doing the final season of Clone Wars after Netflix already brought it back for season 6.
We got the Kenobi series that'll happen sometime next year or the year after.
2021, maybe 2021, but it's possible next year, and certainly we'll hopefully be looking at season 2 of Mandalorian on Disney Plus. And I'm hoping that they can turn it around with the novels, and just that's the one thing is big fucking surprise, guys. Spoilers. Disney drove Star Wars kind of into the ground pretty fast. There's a big hullabaloo about the toys and how that is like a nightmare situation. I think that they've put out way too many lackluster novels. I think that they put out a lot of like decent comics, but they could tighten that up just a little bit more. we're finally getting decent video games. And now we're getting cool live action TV series, which we've never had for Star Wars. We're going to have Clone Wars coming back. Fucking Resistance is ending, thank God. So that awful looking show will be done. And like we said last week, you can step over that log in this franchise and move forward in the animation department. So yeah, sorry to totally derail this podcast at the very last second, but I feel like when it comes to Star Wars, I can take a deep breath and just try not to listen to the things that comes out of Kathleen Kennedy's mouth. And we're okay. We're okay, Jerrad. We're okay.
Thank you guys for listening to episode 167 of the Controlled Interest Gamecast. Hopefully Dom's back next week. If you can, please go to Twitter at CTRLINT. It's Controlled Interest abbreviated. Follow us there. We tweet out whenever the new podcast goes live or anything else related to video games that crosses our mind. You can follow me personally at Jerrad _. You can follow Dom at Dom's Oreos, or you can follow Jordan at Melomotus. On YouTube, if you search Controlled Interest, we'll pop up. Subscribe there. Hit the bell notification. It'll notify you when we upload new videos, because you can't trust the sub boxes on YouTube because they're fickle mistresses. If you go to iTunes, if you listen to us there, go ahead and hit the review button and leave us a review. Helps us move up the dreaded algorithm there as well, so more people can see us. And on YouTube as well, liking the video, it's all about those calls to action to help us get more viewers. Even if it's one additional viewer each week, it's more than we had the previous week. So we appreciate any and all help we get from you guys doing that stuff. So we'll catch you guys next week. Have a great Thanksgiving. You'll probably hear this before your Thanksgiving happens. Or I guess you'll hear this before, but you won't hear our next podcast until after Thanksgiving. That's what I meant to say.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Time travel. It's crazy. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.